Well, welcome everybody. I am Michael Santos, and I got my buddies there, Scott and Justin, and I see Ron Throgmorton and quite a few other people. This is an extra video that I wanted to host a webinar just to give people an update on what I've learned over the past, I would say 2 weeks since I've been traveling into prisons across the country and at a conference for American Corrections Association. It's really exciting for me to be able to share some news, but it's also important for me to put my excitement into perspective, because I have a different time horizon than most people who are on this program. And my time horizon is really predicated on the long journey that I had in prison. And most people, thank God, are not going to have that long of a journey. But there are changes that are happening right now in the Bureau of Prisons that will benefit people who are going in the future. And I want to share those with everybody, but I'd really like it, I think today, if we had it kind of as an interactive, where people should feel free to unmute themselves and ask me questions, because I'm going to be sharing some things here that I don't really want to put into print for a while, and for reasons that I'll explain in today's video. For those, let's say I'm going to be sharing my screen here, and I've got to remember how to do that. Share my screen right here, Google Chrome. Yes. Right there. So I'm going to share this screen. I guess I'm sharing right now. And I'm going to go over to this section here. I'm assuming that you guys can see the Prison Professor's website right now.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just published this today, but I'd sent it out as a blog. I sent it out as a blog to people over the past couple of weeks, which is really basically the same article that went out into our newsletter. And I sent it also to people in prison. And it's really this extensive document.
What's going on?
Oh, let me see. Muting. Justin, are you able to handle the muting part of it for me?
Okay.
Hey, Michael, you're muted as well.
Well, hold on one second. Michael, you're muted. 1 second.
Unmute. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I shared with you that webpage, and in the blog, the reason that I wrote that really lengthy article is because this concept of earned time credits and how the Bureau of Prisons is awarding them is still very much in development. It's very much in development because as we've been writing about for more than a year, the First Step Act is a really complicated piece of prison reform legislation. And the Bureau of Prisons itself as an agency has been very slow in rolling it out. It's been, there's been complications with policies, changes, and that was planned. It was planned by Congress. When Congress introduced the law, they gave the Bureau of Prisons a full year to develop this risk assessment, this risk and needs assessment tool. And then after they had that year of developing that, COVID came, which made things a little bit more difficult, a lot more difficult for people all across the country, and of course for people in prison as well. And then they created the policy statement, but they still have to train 35,000 staff members how to use it. Just earlier, in the last couple of months, the Bureau of Prisons came out with a policy statement on how they are going to distribute time credits. They also came out in early January with the auto calculation system. So people would theoretically have their dates computed automatically, but it has not been a smooth rollout because, of course, they're computing dates for more than 100,000 people, and there have been a lot of challenges with the rollout. So while I was presenting inside of a prison in Springfield, Missouri, about 2 weeks ago, the former director accompanied me to that presentation, and I told him many of the challenges that people in our community are facing and said, how do they really understand how to compute the way the Bureau of Prisons is going to issue these time credits? And I asked him, would you help me understand it as if you were still the director, what you would be instructing your staff? That's what that lengthy article is about. And there are some real complications in it because of the language of the act. People get 10 days of earned time credit every month at one portion of their sentence, assuming they qualify and assuming they've done everything right. They get 15 days a month after they're in another stage of their journey and they've gone through all of the requirements. So those are kind of complicated because it means a lot. If you've got a sentence of, say, 5 years and you could earn 15 days of earned time credits a month, you want to know what that means, and you want to know, what can I do to maximize my ability to get those 15 days? There are some things that are in your control, and there are some things that are beyond your control. And even if you figure out how it works, sometimes you're going to face challenges with case managers or people in the Bureau of Prisons that don't see it your way. And you have to know what to do when you're in that situation. Now, our team will do our best to help you while you're there, but we also think it's important, if you're still able to access the internet, that you know and understand what this means. So my hopes are that through today's webinar and through our future webinars, we can help people get an understanding of what I learned from the former director of the Bureau of Prisons. So we sat side by side each other in a room, and I said, how would you have done this? And what he does is he took me through, he said, there's a couple of things you have to learn first. He said, the first thing is, how does the law work? How would I look at it by looking at the law? Because that's the highest authority. What did Congress say in the First Step Act itself? And so we went through the First Step Act and looked at these different provisions of the law. Then he said the next highest authority is what's going to be codified inside the Federal Register. So that's a higher authority, because in order for them to put something in the Federal Register, that's what goes into the Code of Federal Regulations. And that, from the Code of Federal Regulations and the law, is what the Bureau of Prisons writes what's called a program statement. And the program statement is published in two different colors, black and blue. If it's published in black, that means it's just Bureau of Prisons language. It's not easy to change, but it is easier to change than if it's published in blue, which is taken directly from the Code of Federal Regulations. The reason it's harder in the Code of Federal Regulations, he explained, is because it's got to be published first in the Federal Register. It has to be opened up for comments from anybody in the United States. People can publish their comments. The agency then considers it. They make a decision, and they come up with what's called a final rule. So in the article that I published, and it's on the website right now, you will see that we published all of the citations. And it's important that anybody that's going into prison understands those citations, because if they don't apply the earned time credits the way that you want, you have to be able to advocate for yourself. And the only way to advocate for yourself, as it says in the program statement, if you disagree with anything they write, the process is supposed to be go through administrative remedy. An administrative remedy is a very methodical process where first you have to try and argue with the Bureau of Prisons through an informal resolution. And if you don't get their answer you want, then you have to file what's called an administrative remedy under a BP9 system. Then if the BP9, you don't get the resolution you want, you have to file what's called a BP10, which is an intermediate appeal to the region. If you don't prevail on the intermediate appeal, you file the BP11, which goes to the central office in Washington, D.C. And following that, if you still don't get the answer you want, then you would file what's called a 2241, a motion in federal court that's codified under the habeas corpus provisions. And none of this is really terribly complicated. It's plain English. You just have to be able to know that why you are arguing something. So that's the reason that we published all of these program statements, links to the FSA, the First Step Act, and links to the Code of Federal Regulations, so that you would know where it is and you would know how to cite that in your advocacy campaign. So first of all, I'm going to ask everybody on the webinar, have I thoroughly confused you? Or if you've got a question on how that works, please raise your hand so we could discuss those steps first before I move on. Are there no hands going up? So that seems to me to indicate that everybody understands. So that because this is an interactive webinar, I'm going to ask Ron Throg Martin, my friend, who is not only a valuable member of our community, but has given us some great advice on leadership that I need to take. So I'm going to ask Ron right now to unmute himself, because I'm going to give you a quiz. Ron?
I'm ready.
We're ready. Okay, Ron, you're in federal prison. You've been in federal prison now for 4 months. How many earned time credits are you earning a month?
Well, assuming I haven't had my second review, 10 days per month.
Okay. So why would you assume that you've had your second review in 4 months?
No, I said assuming I haven't. Assuming I haven't had my second review.
You have not. That's very good. So you would have 10 months. How about it's your 8th month in prison? How many are you earning?
Assuming now that I have had my second meeting, I'm getting 15 days. And
I'm your case manager, Ron. And I just told you, yeah, I don't really care about that. It looks like you're getting 10. And I'm not going to give you your second assessment until the 13th month, because I want you to go through 2 program reviews. What's the course of action to take?
Well, I assume what we just went over, and I have it written down. First step, the informal, I call it informal inquiries, what I wrote.
Okay.
And then I got the.
How do I do that? What does that mean?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. That's why I want people to ask questions. Okay. I definitely don't want to just gloss, because what I say, based on, having gone through prison my whole life and worked in this space for 10 years, it's really fluent to me. I need it to be fluent to you. I need you to know what to do. So please, if I've said something that is confusing, this is our time to work through that. And I'd like to ask, is there anybody in our community that's not part of our company that can answer Ron's question? What does he do in the 8th month if he has encountered a case manager who is not granting him or showing him that he is receiving 15 days a month? What is the next step?
He has to file a writ of habeas corpus, right? Okay,
wrong. That's another one that we've got to talk about, okay? Let's try this again. I want to be really clear, and there's going to be a quiz at the end, okay? If something happens wrong, we absolutely have to follow the process. And the first process is an informal request for a resolution. Ron, this is how we do that. We just fill out a little form, and that form is called a cop-out. That's the informal name, cop-out, okay? I will create on this page that I created today, I'm going to put those forms I'll put a button up there today so that you can see what does a cop-out look like. And it's going to be really simple. On that informal resolution that you are going to give to your case manager, you're going to write something like this. Dear Case Manager Smith, I have gone through an initial classification, which everybody's going to go through within their first 30 days. That's the first step. I've gone through my initial classification. According to the program statement, and you could get all that information from the website, I had a needs assessment and a pattern score, and I scored a low. You gave me a copy of that low sheet showing I am a low risk of recidivism. And it doesn't matter if it's low or minimum, it's totally irrelevant. They're both the same. 6 months later, I went through my first, what's called program review. And during that program review, you also gave me a risk assessment, and I scored a low as well. Based on my having 2 risk assessments done within the past 7 months, and the fact that I was low at both of those, I should be earning 15 days a month. Please make that adjustment for me. Now, that is an informal resolution request. That's plain English. I don't need a lawyer to do it. I don't even need to call Justin Paperny to have it done. I can just write that out myself on a cop-out. That's simple, okay? But I can tell you, we're going to have a book by Monday that's like this, that spells all that stuff out. So if you want to have the book inside of you while you're in prison, you can get it, and it'll have these forms and everything and a sample of what you would write in the prison. But for now, it'll be very helpful if this is fluent to you. I know the first thing I had to do was write that very simple request. Let's just say that Case Manager Smith ignored you. She didn't respond, or she refused to help you. What's the next step? You have to go to the counselor, and you have to ask for an administrative remedy. And Sean, I appreciate you for having your hand up. As soon as I get through this little description, I'll ask you to unmute yourself, Sean. But number 2, you file the BP-9. That's the first step in an administrative remedy. Now, if you don't understand these concepts of an administrative remedy system, you're not going to be as strong. And you have to know these are things that you hope everything goes swimmingly well for you while you're in prison. We certainly hope everything goes swimmingly well for you in prison. That was Scott's experience pretty much. I mean, he had a 42-month sentence and he got out in, what, Scott, 13 months or something like that?
13 and a half months.
Yeah, that's pretty good on 42 months. Everything went really, really well. Sometimes it doesn't go really, really well. And so if it doesn't go well, we have to know what to do. This is not a terrible fight. It's just advocating for yourself. And Mark, I see your questions on there. Oh, great. Scott's responding to those questions on there. You just, I'll go to the questions after, but my team might be able to write on the chats. I just want to say, after you do the informal, you do the administrative remedy. If you didn't hear back from the case manager, you file this on a BP-9, which you get from your counselor. You can't get it from anywhere else except your counselor because it's part of the process, right? Everything in a big bureaucracy is part of a process. In the Bureau of Prisons, they love procedures and they love their forms and their program statements. And it's our job to understand them and to know how to use them to our advantage. If we don't know how to use them to our advantage, we are not as strong as if we do. And your job is to get stronger, to learn these self-advocacy pathways while going through this challenge. So Ron, now you know, first step, informal resolution, which you just do on a cop-out. Second step, you ask your counselor for a BP9. That's the first stage in administrative remedy. Third step is if you do not hear back from your case manager or your warden, or if you do not get the answer that you want, when you do get a response, you have to go through the next step. And that's an appeal to your regional office. So depending on what prison you're in, you would have a regional office. Like if you're out here in California, the regional office would be the Western region. And I can show you where these things are to find. But as I said, if you get to prison, we'll send you one of these books that has all that information in it. So you keep it with you at all times. Because this is not only applicable to earned time credits, it's applicable to all kinds of challenges that people face inside of the prison system. We want you to understand, how do I deal with complications when those complications surface? So first step, informal request for a remedy. Second step, BP9, which is the first stage in the administrative remedy process. Third stage is an appeal to the region on a BP10. And let's just say that you do not get a response from the region, or the response you get is not what you want, you go to the next stage. And that next stage is a BP11, which goes to the central office in Washington, D.C. Walter just asked me if you can go straight to a 2241 and bypass the cop-out through BP11. Well, when you ask me, can you, that implies capacity. Of course you can, but you have to know what's going to happen if you do. You're exposing yourself to the very likely scenario that the district court judge will dismiss your case without prejudice, meaning you can bring it again, but he's going to say, you did not exhaust your administrative remedies. And he will say that based on a law that passed around 1990 when I was in prison, called the Prison Litigation Reform Act. Everybody should know about the Prison Litigation Reform Act. So we just published a book on this subject so that you understand how to use it. Now, there is an exception to that, Walter. Let's say that you are supposed to be home right now, and the Bureau of Prisons is dragging you out. Well, if that's the case, you could argue with the district court on a 241 why you have filed directly with the court, because time is of the essence and you should be home, and they're violating your right to due process. And there are precedents when that happens, but it's very rare. So you have to make sure that if you're asking the court to overstep or use its discretion to avoid the PLRA, then I would urge you to make sure you have it right. Some people are just very impatient, understandably, while they're in prison. They want to have a resolution immediately, but that's just not the way the judicial system works. It's a very slow-moving machine. I'm just very used to it. So I'm prepared for these long, drawn-out things. But since I know that drawn-out process can be 90 days or 120 days to get a resolution, I want you to know how to resolve it in the right time. And the right time is not the first month saying I'm supposed to have 15 days a month. You've got to go through 2 assessments. Ron knew that, right? You knew that you get 10 days a month until you've gone through 2 assessments. And you have to have done some other things. You have to have made sure you've taken the Spark 13 needs assessment, and you do that during your first 30 days. So as soon as you get to prison, you fill out your surveys for these various areas where they are measuring your level of risk for recidivism. And then after you do the risk assessment, your case manager has an obligation. She or he has to create for you what's called a personal, it's like a personal release plan. It's their version of a release plan with recommendations on what programs you are supposed to take or go through based on the needs, okay? You may not agree with those needs that they've said you've got these criminogenic needs. You may not agree with them. It's really not that relevant whether you agree with them or not. What is relevant is if they recommend a program, you do that program. And that program can be, fun with walking or learn how to balance your checkbook or whatever. You just make sure you're going through that program, because if you don't follow your unit team's instructions, they will say that you have refused, and then you're ineligible for earned time credits. And this is really, really important. It makes the difference of you serving, all of your sentence less good conduct time or getting these good time credits, which can basically cut your sentence in half, or not really your sentence, but your time in prison in half. So the more you understand this, the more you are going to realize, wow, I have a duty to try and learn these steps. So the short answer to all of this is you have to understand it. I hope that you will visit this webpage right here, okay, which we just published today, okay, and I will put a button on there so that you can see what those forms are. And you are also able to see things like, oh, if I want to go look at, well, where is that? Like there's a section here where I've got all of the authority here. I want to look at, oh, where's this program statement? I just click it, and then you can go and see the program statement. So I hope you can see the program statement here. Scott, could you give me a thumbs up if you see the program statement? Because I can see your picture. Yeah, okay. So you can see the program statement here, which is describing how you get these tools. But remember, the Bureau of Prisons is driven by 35,000 people, some of whom really don't always support helping people in prison. Some of them do, some of them don't. What's really important is that you know how to advocate for yourself, and you have to know the tools. Now, while you're in prison, of course, if you're a member of our community in this program that our team has set up, you're going to be able to send emails to us and we'll respond to you with some guidance. Do this or do that. But at the end of the day, this is very much self-directed, and you just need some guidance on how to do it. So those are the principles of this. And now I see there are 3 hands up. Ron, I already called on you, but I'm going to ask Sean now to unmute himself so that I can respond to Sean. Sean, could you unmute yourself? Let me see if, there you are. I think you're unmuted now, Sean. Talk. Sean? I can't hear Sean. Okay. Let's try. Sean, why don't you ask your question then in the chat? And you could do that right by going to the bottom of the screen, and you could see the chat button, and you could ask me the question in chat and I'll respond if I can't unmute you. Let's go to Brian. Could you unmute yourself, Brian?
Yes, sir. Michael, can you hear me?
I hear you, Brian.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. I had a question about the administrative process when you're on home confinement involving the FSA credits. I haven't seen anything on that information. Everything just pertains to while you're at a prison location or facility.
So, Brian, are you on home confinement now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're still in the Bureau of Prisons then, and that means these policies still apply to you. So you would go to your unit case manager at the halfway house who's overseeing you, but I know that your case manager may not provide you with these forms. Is that a challenge that you've had so far?
Yes, so I currently spoke to my case manager. She had no idea what the FSA credits were. She pointed me to speak to the RRC in San Antonio. I'm here in Texas, which is their main location. I spoke to San Antonio halfway house. They have no idea. They're pointing me to DC to call them to get my FSA credits and see what's going on.
Can I ask you something, Brian? What
Sure.
what was your sentence length?
10 months,
Okay. And how much did you serve in prison?
4 months
Okay. So did you go home on CARES?
on Second Chance Act.
Second Chance Act, but they sent you to home confinement after only 4 months?
Yes, sir.
You got really lucky. What is the victory that you're looking for? What are you objecting to?
So according to FSA, I should be off of my home confinement in March, but my full term is in May, which isn't a big deal with 2 months in the grand scheme of things, but the people there are just unreasonable with my employment and things like that. And I'd rather get away from them as soon as possible because I've been written up for, for instance, missing a check-in, but they're calling me at 11:45 at night and I go to work at 5 a.m. So, they weren't even doing counts in prison at 11:45 at night. So that it's just been a headache dealing with the process and the people. So
I get it. And I'm sorry that you're going through that. I will say on the flip side, there's going to be, there's a reality here, Brian, that the Bureau of Prisons it's got massive problems with staffing, and in the best of times, it's not a family-friendly agency. And you're already home. I'm going to guess they're not going to pay a lot of attention to you. That's going to be just real talk. Now,
Sure.
Do you have a right to fight for yourself? Yes, you do. You could file an administrative remedy by simply asking for the form. They can tell you, I don't have the form, and you're within your rights to just write this out on a piece of paper, submit it, and go through the process just like you're typing it. On the other hand, Brian, I would say, as I wrote in this book today, sometimes you got to know which battles to fight and which ones to go.
Right.
I would not want to fight if I were you, because you're
Right.
already on home confinement and you could piss somebody off and very easily be put back in the halfway house or worse, sent to prison. And that's
Right.
happened, right?
Okay.
Look at the case of Michael Cohen, the famous news guy that was President Trump's lawyer at one point. He was out on home confinement and believed he had permission to go to dinner, but they violated him and they sent him back to prison, and he waited in the hole for a couple of months to litigate it before he got out. Don't fight battles when you've already got a victory that many people would like to have. You had a 10-month sentence, you were home in 4 months, and you went to home confinement, not to a halfway house. I'm not saying it's right. I am
Sure.
simply saying you got a couple of months, get through it.
Yeah.
Or fight it, but I wouldn't fight it if I were you.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that advice. I appreciate that, Michael. Thank you.
Okay. So let me switch to Ron, who also has his hand up.
Hey, Michael, two questions directly related to this. One of the things when I read your blog, I was confused about is the time from that you get your program review. And as I recall in your blog, it mentioned loosely mentioned 12 months. Is there a mandated, they have to give you the second review at a certain date? Like, two-part question. That's the first part.
You want me to go to that first part? Yes.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
go through that first part. Okay. So let's go to the blog, because I want to show you kind of how I got there. And I got there with, first of all, the former director of the BOP, and then with the former head of the halfway house, John Gustin, who some of you guys have already met, because he's been Justin's guest. So here we go, right? So let's scroll down here to see where that section is. And then we're actually going to look at the policy statement. That's what this exercise is supposed to be about. Before I do that, I think I will just explain it. A team meeting really is a generic term that covers two different types of things. The first thing that happens to every person who goes to prison is called an initial classification. It typically happens within 30 days, not 3 days, not 5 days, 30 days. So you get to prison. During those first 30 days, you're going to go through an admissions and orientation program. You're going to go get your health stuff checked out. You're going to get potentially interviews for jobs, although you're not supposed to work. They might give you some kind of temporary job. They're going to give you, you know, you just kind of get to know the prison in those first 30 days. You're going to have to do your surveys, okay? And then you're going to have your initial classification within 30 days. That's one team meeting. At that team meeting, the case manager, before that team meeting, the case manager has to give you a risk assessment of recidivism. Okay? That's the first team meeting. It happens within 30 days. It's rather perfunctory. Don't think you're going to go there and they're going to really get to know you. It's a pretty simple meeting. But you are supposed to get a risk assessment. That's in the policy. Then 6 months later, you have another team meeting, but this one's called a program review. You only have one initial classification. You have a program review every 6 months. Okay. So now let's look at the policy on where I pulled that, because I didn't pull that out of my hat. Okay. You could look at the policy statement now, and you would know where to get that right here. So let's go down implementation of the First Step Act. Let's see, scrolling down here, how to earn maximum good time. I'm scrolling down. This is where it says here, with over 2 consecutive assessments, Hurwitz said, these are important things to remember, that the Bureau of Prisons has the discretion from Congress to do these risk assessments. They have to be 2, and you have to show that you haven't increased the risk. So as long as you are a low or a minimum, assuming you started at a low, you stay a low, or you go to a minimum, or maybe you started at a minimum and you stay a minimum. You just cannot increase the risk, okay? If that's the case, you shall earn. In the Bureau of Prisons, shall means it's a mandate. They have to do it, okay? It's not discretionary. So where are the rules here with regards to when those 2 assessments take place? Let's scroll down and find which one of these is the authority. Person does not follow guidance from staff. Okay. Must reassess. Okay. Risk set periodically. Program statement 5401 unit team risk pattern at the initial classification. So I can look at 5410.01. So that's the first one. So I'm going to go back up here to 5410.01. There it is. I'm going to open that link in a new tab. Now you can see the tab. So it'll say right here, remember, if it's in blue, that means it's the Code of Federal Regulations. That means it's a higher authority than if it's in black. So we can scroll down here. Did I write in there what page what section it was? 54. Well, I'm kind of familiar with it, so I'm going to scroll down. Program objectives, background, definitions of terms. We can scroll down here and you will see that they have a duty to give you this tool at your initial team meeting. That's their responsibility. Inmates consider there's 19 pages here. Hold on a second. Eligible inmate, determination of eligibility. At the inmate's initial classification, right, the unit team will conduct a review of the inmate's current conviction as well as prior convictions and determine the eligibility to earn FTCs. So, according to the director, that's a mandate. That's not a discretionary matter. They have to give you this at your initial classification. So that's the first one of these assessments. Okay. You've got to go to the second. And the second one, I think we got here from program statement right here. Security designation and custody classification right there. This program statement is going to talk about when you do it. I think it's page 6, as I recall. Maybe it's chapter 6. Custody classification form instructions. So you have to know all of these policies because you would want to cite this if you have if you have to go through administrative remedy. You want to cite when are they supposed to do these classification. And in this classification, it's going to tell you they've got to do it in 6 months, 180 days. Let me keep scrolling down and kind of see where it is. I think it's chapter 6. I thought I wrote it on there. In any event, if you scroll through this, I don't want to waste all of our time looking for something in a 108-page policy statement, but it is important for you to know where it is. So let me see. Let me see if I wrote where it was. The 54.10. Regularly scheduled, an inmate will be arrested for both risk levels at each regularly scheduled program review. Program statement 51/100, the second paragraph of chapter 6. Okay, so let's go to the second paragraph of chapter 6. Is this 54 or 5410? Yeah, chapter 6. There's chapter 6, second paragraph. Chapter 3, chapter 3, chapter 3. Scrolling down to find chapter 6. This is an interesting thing to read, by the way, because they're going to, well, all of you are going to be minimum security, so it really doesn't matter, I'm sure, for you. But this was a big thing for me to learn while I was in prison. Okay, here's chapter 6, second paragraph. An inmate's first custody classification will be scored at the first program review following initial classification, approximately 7 months after arrival at an institution. So everybody sees that, right? Program statement 5100.08, chapter 6, paragraph 2, an inmate's first custody classification will be scored at the first program review following initial classification, approximately 7 months after arrival at an institution. That is your second risk assessment, because the policy says every time there's one of these classifications, they have to give you a risk assessment. So the question, who was it that was asking me the question? Was it you, Ron? Ron?
Yes, it was.
So do you see those two authority figures right there, right?
And I think what confused me was the second part of that said, and then at least 12 months thereafter. I think I mixed those two up. So in everybody on this webinar's case, because if you're on this webinar, and I don't mean to be flip on anybody saying how much time they're serving, but I don't think anybody on this webinar is going to get more than 10 years. If you have more than 10 years to go, they may push your classification scores every year, but with the First Step Act, I don't think that's going to happen even for those people because of the mandate. But what's going to have to happen is there's going to very likely be litigation. There's going to be very likely be advocacy work along the way. But that's the process. Month 1, you have your first risk assessment. Month 7 or so, you have your second risk assessment, and then you're getting 15 days, assuming you've completed the questionnaire, assuming your risk assessment has not gone higher. Can go lower, can't go higher. Or it can stay the same. Then you would get 15 days. If they don't give you 15 days, what's really important is that you know what's coming. Now, my guess, just as an experienced person in this system, it's probably going to take a lot of advocacy and a lot of litigation
before 35,000 people in the Bureau of Prisons are all doing this. It's important to remember there are many people in the Bureau of Prisons that don't really like the First Step Act, okay? And they have to learn to get on board because it's the law. But it may take a couple of years before everybody's trained on it. And that's why the law says every staff member in the Bureau of Prisons has to go through annual training on the First Step Act. So if these people have careers in the Bureau of Prisons and they need to go through training every year, what does that mean for each of you? It's also important for you to go through training. It's important for you to know what is supposed to happen. And it's really important because this gives a lot more than just earned time credits. And that's, I see some hands up, but I just want to say, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the additional incentives that each of you should be lobbying for and working toward. And I'll talk about that, and that's going to take me to my trip in Orlando and what I learned there. So, but before I get too much farther, I'd like to make sure I've responded to questions. So I think Frank Glassner, you have your hand up, and I'd like to respond to you.
Hi, Michael, and welcome home.
I'm only home for 2 days. I got to head out to the Midwest again on Tuesday, so I'm happy to be here.
I got a tiny little shout out to you, so whenever you have a second. But on this note, and I just posted my chat question on the same concept. But if you've got 1 year and 1 day, and these reviews ostensibly take place at the 6-month level, how do you optimize with 1 year and 1 day? Your first, your first week or two, you're going to be getting your initial classification per se.
Not first week or two. What did I say?
Sorry, first month.
Right. Don't think it's going to happen in a week or two, or you're going to be disappointed.
And my mistake. My mistake. Okay. But then with the second review coming up at the 6-month mark or so.
7th month. 6 months after your first. 1 month to get the first one. 6 months later, you get the second one.
Okay, but let's say you've done everything right. You followed, the Bible, and you've done everything you possibly could to do a good job. At the 7th month, and you've got earned time credit of, call it 10 to 15 days.
Not 10 to 15, 10.
10. Okay, so there's no possibility to getting to the 7th month if you've done everything right. Could you still be home after 6 months?
Well, you only have a year and a day.
Correct.
So yes, because you could just we just heard from a guy who had 10 months and he was home in 4 months. Okay, so yes, it's possible. It's possible because on a year and a day, you do get good conduct time, which basically top of the head reduces it to about 10 months. First 2 months, you're going to get, first 6 months, you're going to get an extra 2 months of more than 2 months of earned time credits, right? So in 6 months, you will already have received 8 months credit, more than 8 months credit, right? So in 6 months, it's effectively you're only going to do 10. So yeah, I think you're coming home in 6 to 7 months.
Okay, so it's possible that you might not get to the 7th month then.
It's possible, but that you'll still get the credits when you're on home confinement or a halfway house.
Got it.
But you could potentially be home in 6 or 7 months. Yeah.
Okay.
You could theoretically by law be home a lot even sooner because of the Second Chance Act. But let's not get into the realm of fantasy. I think you need to put in your head, everything goes great. I'm home in 6 to 7 months. Worst case, I'm home in 8. Okay?
Got it.
We're going to try to help you make sure it's 6 to 7.
Okay.
Let's go to Walter. Walter, could you unmute yourself?
I
hear you, Walter.
You can, okay, so I'm unmuted. Okay, great.
Yes, you are.
Okay, so
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you and everybody else. So my sentence is 6 months.
Okay.
Is it the 15 days a month, the 10 days a month? Which
Nobody's getting 15 days in the first 6 months because it's impossible to get 2 risk assessments.
Got it. So it's going to be 10 days.
It's going to be 10 days.
Okay, so
And
that means
what's success for you in 6 months?
Could you re-ask that question?
What are you thinking? You've got a 6-month sentence. Tell me what success looks like in your mind.
2 months? Is that obtainable? Or is it 3 months?
Well, let me jump in for one quick second, Michael, because Walter's older than 60 and he applies for the elderly offender program, and I 2 months of that could take him to home confinement. I just want to mention that he's older than 60 as you do the math.
He's still in the Bureau of Prisons.
Right.
Okay. And Bureau of Prisons is not a fast moving agency. I'm sorry. It's just not. And like the fellow who had 10 months and he's home in 4, Walter, I know it's really hard that you've got 4 months. I know that's really hard that you have 6 months, but you're going into an environment where there's going to be people with 25 years and they're not going to look at you the same. That's just reality. Now, you're going to have 6 months. What do I think? 6 months, 10 days, 2 months, that's 20. I mean, yeah, you could qualify for the 2/3 over 60 if you have a case manager that does everything. If we have to fight for you and do administrative remedy, that alone is going to take 90 days, and you can't even fight it until there's something wrong. So like if you were there, if you said, okay, I want to do 60% or so of my sentence, which is about 3.5, you have to do the 3 months first. If you don't get it, or if they don't put you forward, then you have to say, hey, will you help us with administrative remedy? I'll say, absolutely, Walter, we'd love to help you. But in all reality, you're going to be home before even that finishes, just because it's 6 months. You don't get good conduct time. You do get earned time, and you qualify to be home in a month. You qualify to get home as soon as you went to earn your initial classification. The law provides that they could release you. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't. Do I think there's anything you could possibly do to make it happen? No. I just don't think I don't think that would be honest. I think that you have to go in there with your mindset that says, how am I going to get through? Let's put together a 90-day countdown and then say, I think it's realistic. I could make it happen in 90. If I don't, I know I'm within striking distance. I might have to be another week. I might have to be another 2 weeks. But I would say we would serve you far better by helping you get together on a 90 to 100-day plan. Are you working with somebody in our community specifically, Walter? Because I don't think I've ever spoken to you before.
No, I'm new to your program.
Community?
Just with Justin, as I've been working with Justin.
Justin's my partner, and I would challenge Justin to give you a path, a 100-day countdown. What am I going to do in 100 days to make sure that I'm getting through this with my dignity intact, with confidence, and advancing the possibility so that I've got an early termination of supervised release? How can I do that? That's a more methodical, deliberate plan. What do you do for a living, Walter?
Self-employed. I'm a automotive business, car dealer.
You're a car dealer?
Yeah.
So you're a businessman, you're an entrepreneur, you know what it takes to bring customers in, to get leads. It's all methodical, right? This is going to be methodical. You are going to have to figure out, how do I deal with this and how do I get the best outcome? And yes, there are certain things that you could pull some levers in there, but I just think I always want you to be going forward saying, okay, what can I do? And I would put together a 100-day plan. How do you have supervised release?
I think so. I'm not sure. I haven't.
When your judge sentenced you, did he say?
I'm not sentenced yet.
Oh, you're not sentenced yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then you should be thinking about, do you know you're going to get 6 months? Is that like some type of fixed plea?
That was what's been offered, unless it would be better for me to get a year and a day with 6 months in home confinement and then 6 months in.
I would take the 6 months if it were me, because then there's nobody by law that can't do anything, right? It's important to always have these parameters. What's the worst case? What's the best possible case? What's the sweet spot that I can get? And if you can get 6 months, then it makes no difference. The only way you're going to be in there longer than 6 months is if you committed another crime. If you got a year and a day, well, it's potential you could be there for a year and a day. I mean, that's what the judge ordered. I mean, I don't think you would, but it's possible. So, look, here's a reality check. Federal prison is not the Ritz-Carlton, okay? It is federal prison. And it's important to realize that crazy things happen in federal prison. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, some guy in a minimum security camp thought his wife was going to leave him, and he had some, one of his homies or whatever smuggle in a gun, and he brought a gun into the visiting room, was going to kill his wife. It resulted in the entire camp going on lockdown. There's no way you can prepare for that. There's no way you can assume there's something to do get out of it, because now there's going to be an FBI investigation and massive complications. So when we're going into the system, we have to understand, I know that I can control my life and my decisions. I can't control what the case manager is going to do. I can't control what Jim Bob's going to do down the hall. I can't control that somebody's going to do something in the bathroom that's going to upset me. Okay. I've got to say, what's success here? And then make sure I'm taking every single decision that's leading me a little closer. And that's what our community is supposed to help you do. We are also supposed to help you understand, if things don't go right, let's figure out what levers do I have to pull. But I want everybody in our community to be positioning yourself for success, not for a fantasy. I don't serve anybody well. Nobody in our community serves people well by saying, hey, this is super simple. There's plenty of lawyers out there that will do that, okay? Our job is to help you prepare for the best outcome. That's what I'm going to fight for. And I want to help you in that way. And I hope that that's acceptable to you, and that we could earn your trust, not only today, but all the way through the journey, because there's going to be plenty of people who disappoint you. There's going to be case managers who disappoint you. There's going to be unit managers who disappoint you. There's going to be probation officers that disappoint you. And you're going to say, logically, why are they doing this to me? This doesn't make any sense. I don't need to be here. You don't got to convince me of that. I know you shouldn't be there. If you're on this webinar, you shouldn't be going to prison in the first place. But that's my job, to try and change this system and open it up with more incentives and more opportunities for people. We have to do that from an honest perspective and say, we've got to change a very big ocean liner to shift direction. And I just want you to know, I'm very optimistic about those changes. So I just want to say, I'm really, my heart is with all of you, but I want to be honest with you. So Walter, I think we got to get on a 100-day plan and hope you get out in 60 or 70. But I want you to have a plan to develop confidence and know you can make it through this. So I have another question. Did I answer your question, Walter?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Mr. Gallman. I only see your name as Mr. Gallman. I don't know if that's your first name or last.
No, I had to jump off. You couldn't hear me earlier. It's Sean Gallman. I was having trouble difficulty, so I had to jump back on another.
Okay.
On my
Are you Sean?
Yes.
Okay, Sean, how can I help you?
My question is, I'm on home confinement under the CARES Act, and I did
you.
Yeah, I did 5 years on an 11-year sentence. But my
you
question,
are super lucky. Let's first of all just stand out here and applaud that. Just kind of process that 11-year sentence did 5.
Correct.
You know how lucky you are.
I do.
Okay. I don't want to hear any complaining.
No. I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not complaining. But I've read the First Step Act, and one of the things that I've found that the language is not very explicit is, once I'm on confinement, because I have a lot of credits that were not utilized. I did get the year off my sentence, so now I have about 2 years left before I'm transferred to supervised release. But I have not found where I cannot use any of the old credits or credits that I'm earning now while I'm on home confinement to be transferred to supervised release sooner, or have them apply to supervised release. So I'm just trying to get some guidance. Is that even applicable or a possibility, or what does that look like?
So for me to answer that question, Sean, it requires a little bit more work, because what I'd have to see is your most recent computation sheet and see what are they giving you. And then you have to tell me, do you agree with that? Did they give you everything? Because the law is very clear.
Mm-hmm.
you can get up to 365 days off.
Correct.
Anything over and above that is supposed to do exactly what you've already got. I frankly don't think you're going to get any action because
Okay.
you're already home.
Okay.
Okay. And what it would be is if you were in prison and you earned a year and you had 2 additional years, you're supposed to be able to cash that in to get home sooner. Because as
Okay.
you know, 5 years ago, right, when this law didn't exist, on an 11-year sentence, you'd have been doing about 8.
Correct.
So they're looking at you already as having pretty good victory. I don't think you're getting any more action, buddy. Enjoy
Okay.
being home because you're not standing up for count.
No, I'm not. Okay, I appreciate that.
Where are you? What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Tennessee.
Okay, Tennessee. Good to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. So who we have, any other questions on there? I want to talk about some good things that are happening. I'm super pumped about Sean Gallman's getting out. Although the CARES Act has been discontinued, or it's going to be, you've really got a victory getting out on time.
Absolutely.
And they're not sending you back. So
No,
I
they're
just saw
not.
that. So that's awesome. Okay. I want to talk a little bit. I saw my friend on there from Florida, from Boca. I forgot her name, the twin sisters. I saw her name there. Who's there from Boca? You know what I'm talking about. Pardon?
Cheryl, me.
Cheryl, how are you? I got
Doing
good
okay.
news for you. I was in your state about 2 weeks ago, and this is what I want to share with everybody. So, in the First Step Act, it says on there that these incentives, 2 things, are over and above any other incentive. And second, it says on there, we encourage the Bureau of Prisons to come up with additional incentives to advance the possibilities of the First Step Act of reducing recidivism and helping more people come home. Now, Cheryl has an amazing husband. At the very start of his sentence, he was already enrolling in college and doing things to advance the ball. The cool thing is that I was sitting in Florida at the American Correctional Association across the table from 2 BOP leaders. And Patrick, I know this is going to be applicable to you as well. Okay. He was telling me that the Bureau of Prisons right now is looking at those abilities to bring additional incentives that will not require an act of Congress or the president to sign a bill. So that new incentive that I was talking about with him was the expansion of, magic word, furloughs. Who can tell me about the furlough program in the Bureau of Prisons? Anybody? Can anybody tell me about the furlough program? Nobody. Good. We got to teach you something today. Scott Laney, unmute yourself.
Okay.
You did 13 months. How many furloughs did you get in 13 months?
Well, I'll tell you, they denied my one attempt at a furlough, so the grand total was 0 furloughs.
How many furloughs did you see other people get in prison?
I saw 1 furlough.
How many people were in your prison?
300.
300 people over 13 months, 1 furlough. Not a great success rate. Okay. Scott Brown, how long were you in prison?
21 months.
And how many furloughs did you get in 21 months?
I got 0, but I asked for 0.
Okay. How many did you see other people get?
The only furloughs I saw were medical related. So probably 3 to 5.
Okay.
And that was to allow them to go to a hospital or to get some sort of medical care. That's the only furloughs I saw.
Thank you. Matt O'Callahan, how are you? Last time I spoke with you were teaching me about bonds that we're using to teach people in prison. It's good to see you. How
Nice to
long
see
were you in prison?
I was in prison 1.5 years, 16 months. Just like the other speaker.
Okay.
Only furloughs were medical.
Okay. So this is the old BOP. The new BOP, okay, is going to be expanding furloughs. And I had this conversation with a regional director and a director of what's called reentry programming And we were talking about these incentives, and they're saying, we are looking at new incentives right now. And he said, we're thinking about doing this by seniority. And look, the only reason I have a seat at the table at these kinds of things is because of people like Bruce and Scott, who helped me, and John, who helped me create these programs, and Ron, that I distribute to people in prisons all over, right? So we have these like DVDs, and they go into prisons all over the country. And because that's kind of like part of our, I'm sorry, I got it. Oh God, this is the federal prison. I think it is. Let me just see. Hold on. Hello, this is Michael. SCI Oxford, that's good to see you. I'm doing great. How are you? I'm actually in the middle of a webinar. Can I call you back?
Yeah, call me back whenever you're convenient.
I'm planning on being on Oxford next Friday.
Yeah, call me back, buddy.
I will. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, take care, man.
Bye. All right. That's the BOP, right? We're sitting there trying to advocate with the BOP right here on live webinars. So the cool thing is that they're going to expand the furlough program, and they're going to be incentivizing people to work toward these furloughs through your program activity in prison. It's one of the reasons I really ask people, learn this system, number one. Number two, make sure that you know how to advocate for yourself and advocate from a position of strength. Because based on those conversations that I had, in a couple of months, there's going to be two new policies coming out. Okay. One of them's very bad. We're going to make things very hard. One of them's going to be very good. The one that's going to be very bad is the financial responsibility program. You can expect to see a lot more emphasis on collecting money for fines that are owed. You can complain about it all you want, but it's coming, because the U.S. Congress is putting pressure on the BOP to say, you've got to collect more money from the people serving time. So that's going to be a tough policy. When I was in prison, if you were paying $100 a month or $200 a month or $150 a month towards your financial restitution, you were pretty much okay. I don't think that's going to be the case 6 months from now. I think that if you got $500 a month coming in, you'll be lucky to get off paying $250 a month towards your fine. That would be lucky. That's my guess. So that's the bad. The good is that if you do all of these programs and you're in a camp, my expectation based on those conversations is that you will be able to receive these furloughs probably monthly, and then have them grow. So what does that mean? Not only can your family come and visit you, that means you're going to be able to go home for a weekend or for 3 days and spend time with your family regularly. And not maybe, it's going to be a policy that if you perform these tasks and you avoid program problems and you participate in programs, you're going to be able to spend time with your family, which would have been a big deal for Scott, for Matt, and for both Scotts, and anybody else. So I'm very excited about that, because as an advocate who speaks with them, they were asking me, well, should it be by seniority? And I would say, no, it shouldn't be by seniority. It should be by a person's efforts. How hard is he working to demonstrate his commitment to success? And, our programs are going into the Bureau of Prisons. So I have this ability to influence this guy at Oxford Prison. Okay. So I just want to be sharing this with each of you. Things are happening in a good way. I'm going to keep fighting for you. I need you guys to be a part of our community and say, you're going to stay out of trouble. And you're also going to work toward, building a record of progress, participate in FRP, avoid disciplinary infractions. And that's going to help us advocate for people in prison, which is something I'm really passionate about. So Cheryl and Patrick, two family members who have, longer than they should have in that system. I just wanted to give you that bit of news, because I can't really write it yet until it's in the policy. But I wouldn't be saying it if I wasn't sitting across the table from a real decision maker who I'm not fighting and saying, you need to do this. This was an idea that has come up and it's expanding. And I'm going to be pushing pretty hard for that every time I go to a prison. And I've got to go to 2 prisons next week and some more, I think later this month. So I don't know if I'll get coming soon to a prison near you, but I do hope I get to meet you. If you're going to prison, I'll be able to come to your facility. Okay. I think that's what I wanted to share today. I wanted to make sure everybody kind of has an idea of this program statements and so on. What I'd like to do now, because I don't see any hands up, is just look through these questions. Okay, Zoom. If anybody asks a question, it would be a lot easier if you just unmuted yourself and spoke while I'm reading these things.
Hey, Michael, if you don't mind. So I just was sentenced this past Tuesday. Judge ruled 66 months. It was the prosecution was asking for 24. The judge wanted to make an example of me, and then it's 3 years of supervised release. And that's with trying to do everything right.
Let's put some. First of all, my heart just went out to you. The prosecutor was asking for 24.
The prosecutor asked for 24 months.
What did your defense attorney ask for?
18 months.
And the judge said 66.
Yeah, he came down. I mean, I had done everything, ahead of time. Character reference letters, this letter from you, the course, anything spoke, was really humble and everything. And, and I made serious mistakes and judgment errors, of course, but, and the biggest thing for me is, I have 11 children, and being able to be in their lives, they're all young. And so that was just really hard. But no compassion. He said, why should I give you, I think he just looked at me as like, hey, here's this, what he thought was this rich guy taking advantage of the system. And I want to make an example of him.
So let me just say something. That's a really good point for a lot of people on this webinar to be listening to. You could work really hard. You could do everything you possibly can to try and change. Sometimes things don't go our way. And I'm really, really sorry that happened to you. That also happened to me. Things did not go my way. Let's try to put these things in perspective because this is helpful. So sometimes when a judge goes hard like that, I had a good insight from my friend John, who kind of had a similar experience. The judges, sometimes they feel as though if they're light on a person going through the system who's being sentenced, they're simultaneously being hard on what they construe to be the victims of the case. That's not going to stop all the way through the journey. So it's very important for us to be thinking about building a really, really solid release plan, a really solid strategy to advocate for yourself. And I just wrote a much more comprehensive model based on really everything I've learned by going into prisons and interacting with all these administrators. And I'm going to be publishing it on the website relatively soon. I would say it'll be up by next week. I really encourage everybody to get it. I will blast it out as a PDF to you, Patrick, and to everybody else. But it will also be available in like one of these if you want to take it with you into prison, because I want you to see what have I learned from interviewing all of these administrators of what they expect you to see to overcome these challenges. So I just wanted to throw that there because you just kind of tugged at my heart when you said that prosecutor asked for 24 and you got 66. On the same time, I would also ask you to find some hope in stories like Sean, who had 11 years and he got out in 5. Okay, he's home in 5. So don't let these things cripple you. Instead, let's think about, okay, we're going to live in the world as it exists, and we're going to find our way through. What else questions did you have, Patrick?
Another just big one is, and maybe that's for a different webinar, but any more comments about, trying to operate a business, to a certain extent from prison, or any thoughts on that? Just, it's for me, like my whole thought process going into it was, okay, maybe 6 months to a year. And so that's one plan, but when you're now talking 5 years plus, you know, it's totally
Well, you're not
different.
talking 5 years plus. Let's deal with reality, because you have to build a plan for reality. So 66 months is reality. That doesn't mean you're going to be there for 5 years. Can you tell me, based on your active participation in our community, and I'll do it with you, but put you on the spot, what does 66 months mean?
Yeah, so I should get a full 12 months off, you know, for the First Step Act and earned time credit. So that brings it down to 4.5 years. The judge did deny the RDAP program for me, unfortunately.
Judge doesn't deny it, but go back before 66. Okay. Let's do it in order.
Okay.
The first thing is good conduct time.
Right.
Okay. Do you know what that means?
Not enough to present on it.
Okay, that's okay. And it's okay. But this is what these communities are for. Right? Let's learn. Okay. It's not about a monologue, me talking. It's about we're interactive. I'm your teammate. I'm your friend. I want to help you. So 66 months, you are, as long as you don't get in trouble in there, you are going to earn 15% off of what's called good conduct time, GCT. So 15%, simple math, 66, 10% is 6.6. Half that is 3.3, about 10 months off. So 66 months immediately means 10 months off. That's 56. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now you said the judge denied RDAP. The judge he didn't make a recommendation. He didn't make a recommendation. That doesn't mean it's not on. I don't know what's in your PSR. Do you have substance abuse and stuff in your PSR?
Yes.
Significant?
It must not have been significant enough.
It's not up to the judge, just up to you. Is it in there? Does it like say, what is it? Is it alcohol, marijuana? What is it?
Yeah, alcohol.
Okay. And does it say I had a drink every other week, or does it say I had a problem?
The interviewer put in that I have like 1 drink a week, something along those lines.
That's not going to work. So let's just not count on RDAP. Okay. So we're at 56 months, but you're right. You will earn at least 12 months off on ETC. So 56 minus 12 is 46 is 44. Okay. 44. Then you are not, but to earn the 12 months, you kind of have to serve about 28 or 30. So you're already in for 28 or 30 months. There's like a delta between 30 and 44 that you're still going to be in there earning time credits, and they're going to be coming down. Those time credits that you earn extra, you get to apply to more time in a halfway house, more time in home confinement. Okay. So on that period of time, you can kind of set in your head, okay, I think a safer bet is you're going to do about 32, 33, 34 months in there. And I want you to build a release plan on that. Don't build it on 66, because that's going to be too hard for you.
Sure.
Build it on 2.5. Say, okay, in 30 months, I'm going to be extraordinary and compelling. I'm going to have an extraordinary and compelling record. And it's got to be different from what you have right now. Otherwise, if the judge already knows everything, and presumably the judge already knows everything you did, he knows about your character reference letters, he knows about the course you contributed, he knows about all that. So what you have to anticipate is that administrators or anybody else is going to say, well, the judge already knew that and he took it into consideration at sentencing, so it's nothing new. You got to create something new. And in this book that I just told you is going to be coming out, you're going to see how I did it. Okay. How did I do that over a long period of time? Build something new. I need you to be focusing on that. And Scott knows how to do that. So you could talk to Scott about how he did it.
Sure.
If I share my screen for a moment, I got to first of all pull it up because I'm on Zoom instead of Google Meet. Let me pull it up. Hold on 1 second here. I can actually show you. 2, 3. Okay. So here is something I'm going to share with you guys pretty soon, probably by Monday. Let me see if I could go to share my screen. right here. Okay, it's right here. This is like the PDF that I'm building here. Oh, is this it? I don't think this is the right one. This isn't the right one. Oh, it's pretty close. I think it's pretty close. Now this isn't the right one. I gotta get you the right one. Hold on a second. I didn't just. You guys still on the webinar? Did I screw up? Oops.
No, we're still here.
Oh, you do? Okay, hold on a second. Sorry about that. I got to pull up the right PDF. I just did it this morning. 2023 MGS 23 interactive. There it is. Interactive. Yeah, right here. Okay, so let me share this with you. And I'll be sending this out to everybody probably by Monday. So this release plan is the new workbook. It's hot off the press. It just went on to Amazon today. It'll probably be available by Monday. But what I'm trying to share, this is way more comprehensive than the previous one we were using, because I learned a lot more from interviewing all these wardens. So I wanted you guys to see not only the history of the plan, but I wanted you to see an example, particularly for somebody serving, say, more than 3 years. I want you to be looking, how do you lay out a plan that you're going to persuade people to see you later differently? And this one like shows all the different ways that I was doing it when I was in prison. And you could sit there and look through that and you'll read about all this stuff in here, but it's really not about me. It's about when you're seeing this stuff, you've got to be thinking, okay, how do I do something like that? How do I create this plan that's going to make me look different 3 years from now that nobody could possibly say the judge knew before? That, because remember, there's all these people that you're never going to meet that are going to have discretion over your life. And you've got to influence those people. And you've got to learn from people that have done it. You know, there's this old Chinese proverb, if you want to know the road ahead, ask somebody who's walked back. So that's why I create this stuff, is I want to show you I've walked back. This is how I did it. And you know, it's just all about building this self-advocacy campaign for every stage going forward after sentencing, whether it's influencing a unit manager or a case manager down the road, whether it's influencing what's called a residential reentry manager down the road, who's going to assess when you can go to home confinement, whether it's influencing a warden on why I should grant you a furlough, whether it's, you know, if I'm really successful in all this stuff, you're going to see a work release program where you go through programs and instead of a 2-day furlough, you're getting a 1-month furlough and you're going to work and then going back and then checking in and then coming back out. This is not impossible, but it's a heavy lift. I'm just going to be happy to take these little bite-sized pieces. And if everybody on this show tells me in 6 or 7 months, hey, I'm going home for a furlough, I'm going to feel great. Like I feel great for that fellow who had 11 years and he's out after 5. I don't know him. You know, I never met him before. But I'm really happy to see people getting that kind of relief. And I want everybody here to get more relief. And so I have a job to do. And that job is to help you see these are things we can do. So Patrick, I will, it's going up on Amazon. I just published it this morning, but as soon as it's up, then I'll be able to blast out a PDF to everybody and you guys could kind of read through it. And we'll do another webinar just on that. I won't be here next week because I'm going to be in these prisons, but I'll be back probably the week after and I'll be on one of these things.
Thank you very much.
I want you to know we're with you all the way through it, boss, and we'll help you the best that we can. Okay. If anybody else have questions, or do I need to read these comments, these chats? Because I see a lot of these chats have been answered. But if anybody has, go ahead.
I have a quick question. Hi.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Making it through.
Yes. So on the 25% mark of your sentence, do you have to wait the 7 months, or at the 25% mark, you can apply for a review? Or what is the 25%? What is that about?
Let's just go ahead and be honest and just throw out the whole 25% right now, because talking about CARES Act. And the CARES Act, the president this week said he's discontinuing the CARES Act. So you can't go forward thinking, well, the law existed 6 months ago, 3 months ago, it should still exist for me. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. The CARES Act was an executive order at the discretion of the President of the United States. And the President of the United States just told us he's discontinuing the CARES Act by May. So know that, Sarah. Let's not, because here's what's going to happen. You're going to get to prison if you're going to be thinking this is going to happen for you, and you're going to be focusing on it, and you're going to get sad. And I don't want you to get sad. I want you to find your way through this journey and get through stronger. So let's say, what does success look like for you? And I think we had this text, but I don't know. I text to so many people, I get confused. So what's your sentence length?
18 months.
18 months. What is success for you? How much are you going to serve on 18 months?
I was hoping 6, but you said that was aggressive.
Okay. Yeah, I remember the text with you. I do think it's aggressive. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's aggressive. Remember what I said? Think of the best case, think of the worst case, think of the most likely case. Okay. 18 months off the top of my head, 1.8, half of that is 9 is 2.7. So I got to take 2.7 months off of 18. That's 16. That's like 15, a little more than 15 months. That's the worst case. That's not going to be reality, but that's the worst case. Okay. Even off the 15, you got to take it down to 14. That's like the worst case. Okay. In my view. So then it's going to be less than that because of earned time credits, but call it 14. What's the best case? Well, during the first 6 months, call it 7 months, 7 months, you get 7 calendar months. So 7 calendar months, plus you're going to get at least 2 months of earned time credit. That's 9. So for 7 months, you already get credit for 9. Worst case was 15. There's only like a 6-month delta. So I think 7, 8 months is the sweet spot. I think 9 months is probably the worst case.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't want you to go through fighting for CARES Act when you're just going to waste your time.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that the 25% was CARES.
Yeah, that was CARES. That was super. That's like that guy who had 11 years and he got out in 5. I mean, that was a home run. And a lot of people came home on that. And had you been in prison during the pandemic, that may have been possible. May, not for sure. It was something you had to fight for and advocate for, but it was possible. It's not going to be possible anymore. The law won't exist. Now, on the other hand, the law does allow you to get out in 6 months because there's a Second Chance Act and you have a relatively short sentence. Not short by your perspective, but it's going to be short by the Bureau of Prisons perspective. So 6 months is definitely possible. I just don't think that's a thing to go. I mean, if it happens, you can celebrate it and be super happy.
Yes, but they're more like 9 months.
I think that's the thing that we should get our head around, because maybe you're out before then, but if you're not, you're going to be super, super close. But you're going to communicate with me when you're there and we'll figure out what to expect.
Yes.
Where are you going?
Brian. FPC.
I have some friends there. I'll make sure that I introduce you.
Okay.
When are you going?
The 15th of this month.
Let's make sure that you remind me of that this weekend. Send me a text so I can send an email to the people there that they'll be waiting for you when you come.
Okay. And I'm working on my release plan.
Am I supposed to review that?
If you could, or Justin or somebody.
Well, I could definitely do it, but I just need you to know I'm traveling next week, so don't delay.
Okay, so if I get it to you by Monday or Tuesday, it'd be good time.
Tuesday, I'm going to be on an airplane. I'd love to be doing it while I'm on that airplane. So yeah, it'd be great if you got it to me by Monday night.
Okay, all right.
I'll be in prisons all the rest of the week, though. So yeah, I'll edit it when I'm on the plane.
Okay, I'll be.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
You have a good weekend. You talk to my wife, Carol?
Not recently.
I think you need to talk to her about the drug program in there. I think she was telling me something about it last night. I think it's you.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But I don't qualify for the RDAP.
It's not RDAP she was concerned about. She was concerned about you getting the treatment you wanted.
Oh, okay.
So talk to Carol or send her a text or something. She told me about something last night.
Okay. I'll
Thank you.
follow.
Okay.
Thank you.
I see Kathy has a hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just by way of introduction, my husband was a client of Justin's team, and I've become like a religious student of your website, your blogs, the products that you put out there, and it's been just a blessing. And
Kathy, what's your husband's name?
Mike.
I don't know him. I don't know if I know him or not, but okay, tell me.
Yeah. So this is just a question about the earned time credit process. So are the credits calculated monthly? And is it something that the case manager needs to initiate, or does it only happen after an assessment? I just wasn't quite sure. Like if I go to the BOP inmate locator and I see a release date, is that a projected date, or is that the application of the earned time credits through the most recent full month? I hope this makes sense.
Okay, no, you are certainly entitled to be confused by this. It's really complicated. I can tell you that lengthy blog article I wrote that's published today. I went through with the former director at least 5 edits, going back and forth and looking at the program statements at least 5 times. And then I had his partner, John, on there. It's very confusing, Kathy. And I'm going to ask you a question. How long is your husband's sentence?
It was 14 months. He was approved for the CARES Act. He had a documented medical issue. He was approved in October for the CARES Act, and he is supposed to be released this month, February 16th.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, then it doesn't matter because he's going to come home. If he doesn't come home, then it matters. But I would say we have to expect, I wrote that long article, say, this is what it's supposed to do. In all reality, I think there's going to be a lot of advocacy work done on this thing. I think there's going to be litigation because they have to create a lot of training, because a lot of case managers are resistant to giving that time. And they're stating things like, some of them are saying you got to go through 3 teams before you get the 15 days. So somebody's going to have to challenge it. And that would have to be somebody who is being violated. So theoretically, it's somebody that's been in prison for maybe 2 years, and they've gone through 2 assessments and they didn't give them the 15 days. And they've got to go through administrative remedy and then a 2241 and have a judge rule. And that could be a 1-year process. So I know that we'll be involved in that. Some people are getting it. Scott got it, everything. What prison's he in?
Duluth.
Oh, he's in Duluth. Well, it's let's hope he comes home on CARES this month. Okay.
I hope so. We've not heard anything though. Should I have expected something by now?
Well, you're still within the window when the law is still in existence. So if he heard it, I'm sure he would not have told you that he was getting it if he didn't know that he was getting it. If his case manager didn't tell him you're approved, you're being released.
Okay.
But it's the Bureau of Prisons, and sometimes it's a little bit, doesn't operate the way we want it to operate, and we just have to be ready. All I can tell you is that I'm glad he's already been approved, because I don't think many more people are going to get approved now that President Biden's say. But if he's already approved, then it's done. I mean, we know a guy that just got released yesterday, so it's could still be happening as long as he's already approved.
Yes, I think the whole thing about this entire journey is learning to just really celebrate the wins, even if it's just a small win, and accepting what doesn't go the way that we hope that it will. And I guess really the wisdom to just understand the difference between the two.
Well, we're glad that you're in our community, and I hope to celebrate your husband's release this month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ryan, could you mute yourself?
Hey, Michael. Hey,
Hi, buddy.
I just wanted to reemphasize.
I can recognize that voice, Ryan. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for the email last night. I was going to respond to you today. I'm really happy that you wrote me that lengthy email.
Yeah, and I know we'll get caught up at some point as well, but I'll give you a little bit of a sneak preview. I just wanted to reemphasize the importance of having that release plan. I prepared mine using your template prior to going in. I updated it throughout my stay. I brought it in with me, paper documents with me as I entered the camp. My unit team manager was very impressed that I walked in with them, and she had expressed to me that she had passed them on to the halfway house. The catch in my story is that ended up not being true, and when I got to the halfway house, they did not have the release plan that I had prepared. They just had a simple templated one, so my case manager did not tell me the truth. But fortunately, I had my wife bring another copy of my release plan with me, so I had that in my hand for my first meeting with my team manager here at the halfway house. And that ended up being a crucial step of having that in place, having it spelled out and be able to show it to him. He did reach out and took the release plan and sent it over to the probation officer after our meeting yesterday and started that ball rolling. So if I didn't have that release plan in place, that probably wouldn't have been an option to be able to do. So it was crucial.
I thank you for sharing that. I'd like Scott, if I could, Ryan, because I know your situation. Scott, could you unmute yourself if you're still there? Scott Laney?
Yep, I'm here.
So Scott, Ryan just got released, I think 2 or 3 days ago, or transitioned from a prison camp to a halfway house. And it's, as for many people, it's somewhat of a shock for this to happen, to go from prison to a halfway house. Scott, I don't think you've ever spoken with Ryan before, and I'm not going to prompt you with anything. Could you tell him about your ideas or your vision when you first went to a halfway house, and then how those perceptions changed over the weeks to come?
Sure. And funny story, Ryan and I had actually been chatting a little bit in the direct message feature. Because when I saw his story, Michael, as you know, I related to him. I thought, boy, if I can just get out of this prison, life's going to be great. And in the halfway house, I see Scott Brown nodding his head as well. It is a different experience. I'm not saying prison is enjoyable, but you get into your routine there. And it was a really good lesson for me in terms of 2 personality traits that I think are exceptionally beneficial through this experience. And that is that of humility and patience. I had done the work ahead of time, and I had created these assets to help myself advocate for a better outcome. And I think those assets played a role in my being released to home confinement when I did. However, like most things in the Bureau of Prisons, it simply did not happen under my desired time frame. So Ryan, I really feel for you in that regard.
But let's describe what that was. You had a 42-month sentence.
Correct.
Got transitioned to where? You didn't go to home confinement. You went to a halfway house.
Transitioned to the halfway house.
At how long?
13 and a half months.
So I want everybody to kind of think, in my view, that's like a grand slam home run. In Scott's view is, geez, that's not fair. My judge sends me to 42. I got to do 13. That's not fair. It's not my time frame.
I know, I know.
That's the first thing to learn. Second thing to learn, Scott, how was your reaction when you got to the halfway house? You said that, you got there. Did you like it?
This is good. I deserve this. I called Michael up and I'm like, how do I get back to prison?
Right? You hated the halfway house, and it took a little while. How long did it take?
I'm embarrassed to say this. It was about 3 weeks. It felt like
okay. No, you should, because Ryan, I want Ryan to hear that. There will be discomfort. There will be, this doesn't make any sense. There will be, it's not fair. But after 3 weeks, Scott was fortunate. He got to go home.
I did. And I think that patience, that humility, following your recommendations, it helped.
It's about knowing what battles to fight, because I know that everybody on this webinar is super intelligent and has good critical thinking skills. And we always have to think about the battles we want to fight and the ones that we have to let go. And, you know, Ryan was saying, hey, the case manager told me he sent this there. When I got to the halfway house, it found out it wasn't there. Okay, well, you know, that's part of the journey. We have to know how to fight and when to fight and what venue to fight in. Sometimes we don't even know. Sometimes we don't know. I used an analogy in something I wrote before, like, let's just say this. You got a cousin I live in Seattle and I got a cousin that lives in New York, and my cousin said she sent me a check this afternoon and I need that check. Okay. How effective would I be if I called up the post office in New York and said, hey, my cousin said she sent me a check. Can you get it to me a little faster? How many of you think, show of hands, that would be very successful? Nobody thinks I'm going to win that way? It's kind of like that when we're fighting when we're dealing with this bureaucracy. We can't just expect that we're going to jump the line and they're going to move the needle for us. We've got to know how to pull the levers, what levers to pull, when to pull them, and sometimes when to say, you know what, let them win that. This isn't the one I want to, this isn't the battle for me. I want our team to get that sense of, how do I navigate my way through a difficult journey? Because this is about crisis management. That's what this is. Personal crisis management. Anybody on this webinar has gone through a crisis. Our job is to get through it with our dignity intact, recalibrate our life, restore our confidence, and find a way that's going to get us to the next victory. So it's 11:45. I know I've been on this for a while. I just want to, is there any other, I don't want to disrespect anybody. If anybody has a hand, you can just unmute yourself. If not, I got to get ready for the next task. Okay. I don't see anybody. So I want everybody to have a great weekend. I will get this release plan ready in a PDF format. I'll blast it out in one of these emails so that everybody gets it. And then you could decide if you want to get the soft cover. I'm sure that my wife will send it to everybody when they're in prison, but I just want to thank everybody for being a part of our community. God bless and bye-bye.
Bye, Michael. Thank you. Talk to you later.
Okay, Moshin. Thank you. Bye-bye.